Thank you. I appreciate it. I brought my napkin up here because it's the same material my prom date's dress was made out of. And I don't know, I just hadn't thought about that in a long time. You know, if you happen to have an old neon sign laying around, I think we could make some money. Robert has done a good job. I do want to tell you a little bit about this building, but first, just to settle my own curiosity, because I've been looking around. If you are a female and you went to Abilene High, Cooper, or Wiley at any time during the 1970s, would you raise your hand? Anybody that went to... That's what I thought. I had a crush on every one of those people during that phase of my life. Robert and Holly Hemke, they do own airtight windows, just to put it mildly, he has a passion for neon signs. He also has a passion for cars and for motorcycles. I'm sure you've noticed he restored the iconic Coca-Cola sign that is on the roof of this building, which has been up there since the 1930s. To me, that sign is the equivalent of the Mobil Oil Pegasus, as is to Dallas. That Coke sign is to Abilene. And of course, Robert has not just one Pegasus sign, but he has two of those. The building that you're in was built in 1927 by a guy named S.M. Shelton. You can eat your food. If you're a Baptist to me, it does not offend me, so eat away. Don't eat my food. His name was Sim Marvin Shelton. He was the local Buick dealer. He also sold GMC trucks. He was a very strong Methodist. He helped start McMurray College, and he also was one of those who helped start the Abilene Country Club. He arrived here in 1909. He worked for Fullwiler Electric, and then in 1917, at the age of 33, he opened his motor company on the east side of the 200 block of Pine Street in what is today the location of Abilene's ugliest building, the AISD headquarters. And you can tell them I said that. That photo is from 1922, and the parade that's being staged there is by Simmons College for one of their upcoming football games. Down the block, as you can see, the Fullwiler Electric building. That's where Mr. Shelton worked before the Buick dealership. In the middle of the block is Johnson's Cafe. Clover Johnson would later be our mayor, and he is the namesake of Johnson Park at Fort Phantom, and he is the reason that we have the lake at Fort Phantom. Next door to Mr. Shelton's Buick showroom, you can spot the Cowden Payton hardware store, owned by Mr. Cowden and his son-in-law, Cross Payton. And by the way, Mr. Cowden's great-granddaughter is right back there. Hi, Kimberly. Charles Yeager's shoe store was on the corner. He sold shoes from that corner for 22 years. Everything in this picture is now gone, except part of the Radford building that's there on the corner. 2/3 of that building still stands. A kid from Coleman sauntered over to Abilene in 1956, and he set that building on fire. It burned pretty well. The only thing that was left was the walls of the first and second floor, and so the Radford estate rebuilt it, and it was until very recently, of course, was home of Conley and Company before they went caddy corner there. But isn't that just the worst photo of Mr. Shelton ever? I tried very hard to find a much better photo of him on the internet. But if it wasn't for the magic of the internet, I wouldn't have even found that picture of him. And while I was doing that, I got to thinking, I should look up some pictures of the people coming to the event that night. I thought I should Google some of your pictures. Then I decided that was a bad idea. Then I changed my mind. And I thought it was a better idea. Then I thought it would embarrass some people, and I thought, I don't care. It's not me. So I did try to look up some of your old photos. Many of you, though, have universal names like I do. Very common names, not universal, not common. Joe's and Charles and Kathy's and Ron's are out there, and last names like Parker and Black. And so it was going to be way too time consuming, and so I decided not to do that. And then I woke up in the middle of the night, and I thought, you know, Lon Biebinghauser. There's just one. I found that in about 10 seconds. That is Lon's senior picture as an overdressed Graham High School steer. So now you should all be nervous. Lon, you should relax at this point. In 1927, Mr. Shelton bought the old commercial hotel, which was on this very corner, and he tore it down. And many of those stones were hauled over to Elmwood and are now the walls of the home of Dr. and Mrs. Peter Norton. With this lot was cleared, and then Shelton built this building, and he moved his Buick dealership from Pine over here to South First and Elm because it was on the highway, the Bankhead Highway, a transcontinental highway that started in Washington, D.C., ended in San Diego. It was named for the U.S. Senator from Alabama, John Bankhead. It was also called the Broadway of America. There was, at Palo Pinto, the highway split, and there was an alternate route that went through Breckenridge and through Albany, and then the alternate route met back up with the main highway right outside that door at South First and Cedar Street. And of course, that's the reason that South First has the motels on it and North First doesn't have any motels on it. In April of 1927, Mr. Shelton moved into this building, and if you doubt that, well, his name is still over the windows right over there. And the Buick logo is in the floor by the front door there and over there. You could walk in here and he would sell you a Buick Master 6, and unless you fell for all the add-ons, it was going to cost you about $1,800. 2 years after opening, Mr. Shelton sold the dealership, but he did not sell the building. And the new Buick dealers remained here for just a couple years, then they moved down the street to Poplar, which is where the junket store is today. He then leased this building to the Chrysler Plymouth dealer, who I assume put a throw rug over the Buick logo that's grouted into the floor over there. They were only here a couple years, and the next tenant is the one who gave the building the name used today, of course, D&W. However, Mr. D had already opted out of the business, and it was only Mr. W, but he kept the name. That photo, by the way, is from 1936 when we were building the underpass during the Great Depression. That's a New Deal project, and that is the intersection of the Bankhead and the alternate highway. The D was W.A. Daniel. Everybody called him Dan Daniel. And the W was Jess Winters. They went into the tire business together in 1929, and then they departed ways in 1932. But Winters kept the name. It was just him, though, that moved here. He was not mad at Dan Daniels because, in fact, he named his son after him. And many of you knew Dan Winters, who passed away just in 2021. In fact, if you play golf at the country club, I know that you knew Dan Winters. Shelton remodeled this building for the new tenant, and he took out the front corner and he made it into a gas station. And I'm not sure if the gas tanks are still under there, but that's why I asked for the podium to be over here. And by the way, the house that you see on the right was actually a boarding house called the Up to Date. And then the gas station, the Magnolia station there on the left, which of course is still across the street, which Robert and Holly own. Just out of the picture on Elm Street by the gas station was a mesquite tree that figured quite prominently in the tree sitting contest, which cropped up here in the 1930s. I'll save you the story for another day, but you should just know that a kid named Thurman Klein sat in a mesquite tree here for 16 days. And that's hard to do. This is Jesse Winters when he was a bit younger. The P on his hat stands for Phillies, as in the Philadelphia Phillies, which was one of the major league teams that he pitched for. Jesse Winters was also known as T-Bone Winters. While he was a student at Tarleton, he was on the baseball team and they were on a road trip. He asked for a T-bone steak and the waitress brought him a boneless sirloin steak, and he made a fuss about it, and so the team nicknamed him T-Bone. His pitching arm drew the notice of the big leagues, and he played for the majors from 1919 to 1923, appearing in 110 games. He was first with this team, which is the New York Giants. He played alongside Christy Mathewson and Jim Thorpe. He was on the Giants when they beat the Phillies in September of 1919 in what is still the shortest 9-inning game in baseball. They got it all done in 51 minutes. From 1957 to 1959, he served as our mayor, and in 1961, the city commissioners officially changed the name of what was the West Freeway to the Winters Freeway. The state of Texas lets municipalities name highways, but they will not pay for the cost of the sign. So I don't know if you've noticed, but there is not a single sign that says that that is the Winters Freeway. We also named one of the Rose Park baseball fields for him. It was the T-Bone Winters field. That sign has been stolen, and so we don't know what it's called these days. But as you can see, he was also a cigar smoker. And I was so hoping Jay Hardaway would be here. But if you don't mind taking a picture of that and texting that to him, I would appreciate it very much. I think we'll just put him down here next to Lon. T-Bone Winters sold D&W in 1950, and the new owners kept the name. They started selling appliances. They later started selling furniture. The gas station went away. They put the windows back in the corner. And in this picture, you can even see Gerald Galbraith's dad's old electrical business, which was right next door. If you went through those two doors down there. One of the employees at D&W bought the business in 2019, I think. It's Tom Rose. He changed the name to Thomas Everett Furniture, which was his first and middle name. You know that at that time, if you bought furniture here, there was a second story. But he sold it to Robert Hemke, who took out the second story and has put this back as it was as a Buick dealership. So now you at least know where you are, but that took so long you probably forgot why you are here. So it's because of your support for the United Way. If you're at all like me, you're constantly asking yourself, how and why did we get here? Literally and figuratively. How did we all wind up in Abilene? How did we all come to be in this same room on a Thursday night in January of 2024 in an old Buick dealership on the Bankhead Highway? And I would say that the catalyst that began our journey to here and now happened 103 years ago. Ron, you can eat your steak. You're making me nervous having to turn around. In February of 1921, the chamber president was the man you see there on the left, Mr. Hale. He later served as our postmaster. He, along with his pastor at First Baptist, Miller Jenkins, created what was known as the United Benevolent League, and it was composed of representatives of the charity organizations in town. And the goal was to not duplicate their fundraising efforts. A year after they formed, the Benevolent League suggested that the Lions Club here endorse the new idea, which was on the horizon, called Community Chest. So back then, the Lions Club used to hold their meetings at the Grace Hotel. If you notice in that picture, the fourth floor hasn't been added yet. That Hotel Grace sign that's on the side of the building there is now inside the building on the second floor. I'm sure Robert wishes he had it. But that day, the Lions Club program consisted of members standing up, giving 3-minute speeches of what they thought Abilene needed. Architect David Castle said we needed a municipal auditorium. C.W. Gill said we needed more paved streets. Are you listening, Mr. Hanna? Grady Kinsolving said we needed to enlarge our zoo. And Dan Lauder said we needed a downtown drinking fountain. And club president and dentist Ray Maddox stood to say we needed a community chest. And of course, as you know later, we did enlarge our zoo and are about to again, and we built that auditorium and we paved the streets, and we did in 1924 start a community chest. We still do not have a downtown drinking fountain. That hasn't happened. But the initial goal was $17,000 that year, and they met it. But the whole thing was rather short-lived because 2 years later, the community chest was abandoned. The idea was abandoned, and the reasons are not worth going into. But 12 years later, in 1938, the Booster Club and the newspaper resurrected the community chest idea. And in fact, the whole idea was gaining traction until one person killed it by reminding everyone about the earlier reasons that are still not worth going into. And I'm not going to say who killed it, because even though it was 86 years ago, gossiping is gossiping. But ironically, 5 decades later, in the 1990s, that person's daughter-in-law was the United Way Volunteer Service Award winner. So that is a riddle for you to solve later this evening. During World War II, over the objections of the same naysayer, the community chest was resurrected, and in 1945, 5 agencies got together: Salvation Army, YMCA, YWCA, Boy Scouts, and Girl Scouts. Morgan Jones was named campaign chair. They set the goal at $67,985. I don't know why they didn't round $15 up to 68. It doesn't matter. They were short by 30% anyway. The next year, we lowered our goal to a round number, $55,000, only missed it by $2,000. Things were tootling along pretty good. From 1946 to 1955, we were batting about 400 on meeting the goal. In 1951, we were $500 short of the $84,000, but campaign chairman Nib Shaw noted there at the bottom of his quote, he says, "We know where we can get it." In those days, he was likely referring to the wealthiest, most generous person in town, which was Bessie Radford. But big changes came about in 1956. First, the community chest hired a full-time director to manage fundraising efforts. His name was Lee Blumker, and yes, I looked it up to see how to pronounce that, and that too is a terrible picture. I hope your picture is better. He came here from St. Louis with his wife and 3 kids. We paid him $8,000. I put that into the CPI calculator. That came out to $91,000 today, so he was doing all right. In the spring of 1956, he asked the board of the community chest to appoint a committee in order to gauge interest in becoming a community chest, or leaving the community chest format and becoming part of the United Fund. The United Fund was really a combination of the community chest plus other charity organizations, thus that was where the word United fit into it. And it was the president of First Financial Bank, or Farmers and Merchants as it was back then, Mr. Walter Johnson, who headed up the exploratory group. He liked the idea. He pointed out that there was such thing as payroll deduction, and his group's recommendation was that it does become a United Fund. So in June of 1956, the United Fund came to be. There were 18 agencies invited. 4 of them opted out because they were national organizations and had their own fundraising mechanisms. That was like the Tuberculosis Association and the Cancer Society. But Mr. Blumker's title changed from being the director of the community chest to being the director of the United Fund. And the head of the new United Fund board was insurance man Maury Millerman. The campaign leaders are shown there, including Mrs. W.B. McDaniel. She was the wife of a McMurray vice president, and she was in charge of the women's division. The general managers of that initial campaign were the 2 bankers in town, Walter Johnson and Malcolm Meek of Citizens Bank, and to demonstrate the amount of money that they needed for advanced gifts, those 2 bankers shoveled cash from their vaults into a bag as a photo opportunity. Then they put the money back in the vaults after that. The 1956 goal was $246,000, and Mr. Johnson and Mr. Meek saw to it that that was achieved. Another innovation by Mr. Blumker was the Loaned Executive Program, which began in 1958, but the following year he decided to return to his hometown of St. Louis, where he took a job with their United Fund. And the next director was B.L. Jackson. He came here from San Angelo. He had some tough sledding because following the success of the 1956 campaign, we had a 10-year dry spell of missing the goal. Then in 1966, restaurateur extraordinaire Mac Eplin led us over the top, and he not only that, but he gave a rousing report at his brand new restaurant, the Jamaica Inn, who had the best hush puppies in Abilene, bar none. But Mr. Jackson's greatest idea, in my opinion, was to hold a beauty pageant to choose a United Fund representative each year. He knew you needed a local face, and so he thought, why not a pretty face? First to wear the crown in 1959 was Mary Jo Holt, the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Harry Holt. We next went on a 3-year run of brunettes, which was then extended by a couple more dark-haired winners, and then even more. You might recognize Sherry Haynes Spear. She was not only my old babysitter, but I did have a crush on her as well. Then somehow bathing suits became a part of the pageant, and that killed the whole thing. They took it too far. And so, unrelated to all of that, Mr. Jackson left for Longview in 1972. And the new man on the job was Marvin Justice, but everyone called him Bo. He came here from Corpus Christi, where he had been working on their United Fund. And that picture of Bo is from 1973. And also, this picture of Jack Rentz is from 1973. In fact, they have the same haircut. Although Jack has changed his hairstyle since then. I spent a lot of time looking for that picture right there. I'm just, move you down there. Also in 1973, while Bo was the president, the name changed from United Fund to United Way, and the office was moved from the old Windsor Hotel to the Lone Star Gas Building. But just before Mr. Justice took over, the 30-year-old day nursery of Abilene had closed. But the need to provide affordable daycare had certainly not gone away. So in 1973, the United Way helped to restart that effort by creating the Day Nursery of Abilene, and today, of course, it is one of the most tenured recipients of United Way funds. The 1973 campaign was led by another banker, Ken Murphy, of First Financial. That's him at the head table there. And that's back when the fire marshal used to let us sit at those long, skinny tables and didn't worry about people getting run over. On the platform there, giving the speech that day to a crowd of 900 was Governor Dolph Briscoe. Next to the governor is Bo Justice and his wife Deborah, and I know that's her because her hair showed up really well in pictures. The following year, another banker led us, this time Sid Niblo, and he was the first to lead us to raise more than $500,000. Some other familiar names to lead campaigns under Mr. Justice were Dick Spalding, Dick Orsini, and of course H.C. Zachary. And H.C., this is a compliment I'm about to pay you, but you look younger now. I did find this photo of H.C. out there on the internet. Sophomore year, Henrietta High. No couple here tonight, Dixie and Kathy know this. There was great support in this room, but no couple's support goes back farther than H.C. and Lanitas, who have been supporting United Way since the early 1970s. Bo Justice left in 1978, and he went back to Corpus Christi to run a boat dealership, so that sent Jack Grable heading here from Los Angeles. He was here for 11 years. For one thing, he increased the staff by 66%. They went from 3 people to 5 people. By 1980, the goal was over 800,000. Bob Springer was the campaign chair, and we met that goal just by the skin of our teeth. But then we set our sights on surpassing $1 million in pledges, and another banker, Bob Milstead, led us to break that sound barrier, and we surpassed $1 million when the Abilene Reporter News donated $900 in unclaimed Puzzle Bucks money. You may not remember Puzzle Bucks. Heck, you may not remember the Abilene Reporter News. Some of the other campaign leaders who helped Grable in fundraising were these folks. Billy Proctor Shaw was the first female campaign chair. Jack Grable retired in 1988. He did go on to serve on our city council before he moved to Florida. Glenn Cochran then took over. He came here from Shreveport. He was young and innovative, and it was his idea to honor a volunteer each year with the Volunteer Service Award. And the first recipient was in 1990, and of course a banker, Ray Howe. What is it with bankers in the United Way? I don't know if attorneys just don't have time or are too busy, but it was another banker, Scott Deeser, who led the 1990 campaign. It was the 35th campaign since Walter Johnson had back in 1956, and of course Scott put us over the top, and although I can't prove that the United Way success led to his climbing the ladder at the bank, but 50 days later he was named the president of the bank. It could have been the mustache. Here's a better picture of the mustache. And here's Scott in college at Texas Tech. I love the internet. If you do an image search for extra large ties, that picture comes up. Just put you over there. After 4 years, Cochran moved to Lubbock, and over 80 applicants from across the country applied for the position, and we wisely hired from within, promoting Dixie Bassett from campaign director to the president, and finally somebody went to Olin Mills for their picture. As Kathy said, I believe she said it, and she worked there for a total of 24 years. No one has served as president longer than her term of 21 years as president. She blazed lots of new trails. For one thing, it was under her leadership that we finally asked an attorney to lead the fundraising effort. that was Paul Cannon. He led us to raise more than $1.8 million. In 1998, the fundraising goal was set at $2 million, or at least real close to $2 million. Dixie got us over that by several thousand. She also implemented what we know as Day of Caring, where we take a day out, of course, and spend it working and putting our feet and our hands to our hearts. She also integrated 211 under the United Way umbrella. She retired in 2013, leading us to even more color photography. And that is a nice picture of Kathy, so I hesitate briefly to show you what I found on the internet, but my hesitation is over. Anyway, that's Kathy. That's 8th grade, Winsboro. While you look at that picture, I'm reminded of the story of the circus strongman. I don't know if you remember this story, but circus strongman would take a grapefruit in one hand and he would squeeze it until there was not a single drop of grapefruit juice left. And then he would challenge anyone in the audience to come up there, and if they could squeeze out a single drop, he'd give them a $100 bill. Nobody ever did it. He did it one day, pulled off his shtick, and he challenged anyone to come up there, and this little skinny blonde-haired girl walks up there, picks up the grapefruit, easily squeeze out 10 more drops, $100 a drop. He's like, "Who are you, and how did you get an extra $1,000 out of me?" She said, "I'm Kathy Ashby, and I raise funds for the United Way of Abilene." I spent a lot of time looking for these old pictures, more than I should have. And some of you are lucky, because on the internet there actually are a lot of Ron Butlers and Charlie Blacks out there. Where is Charlie? Get your camera ready, please. So Ron is fortunate. Charlie, not so much. That's Charlie. He's from that era when you didn't have to talk much because your sport jacket did the talking for you. I was just kidding, Ron. 1981, Texas Tech. Kathy is the 7th United Way executive. She's been on the job for a decade. And as you can see, I've predicted she'll be there for a total of 40 years. In 2014, she did lead us to implement the United Way Foundation, which is, of course, building a permanent fund to help the future of the United Way. In 2019, the Winter Light Fest began to attract us like moths to a flame. But as you well know, the main focus of the United Way is financial support and stability of those member agencies. And last year, over $2.4 million was raised to do just that. And you may never have needed the support that is offered through places like the Big Brothers Big Sisters, or CASA, or the sanctuary that you can find at the Noah Project or at Hope Haven, or even the services from the Medical Mission, the Victims Crisis Center, or even the Day Nursery of Abilene. But you do make it possible that others can find that support in that sanctuary and those services. But there are other ways that the United Way serves these days. There is 211, a call for help, the service that you call if you're having trouble with basic needs. I have never had to call it, and I'll bet money nobody in this room has ever had to call it. But for 21 years, Mary Cooksey headed it up superbly. She managed it through the COVID crisis, which brought over 200 calls a day. They answered some 31,000 calls in 2019. Also in 2019, the United Way and the Community Foundation created the Disaster Relief Fund, which provides relief, recovery, and rebuilding following any natural disaster. The EF2 tornado in 2019 damaged over 416 homes and businesses here, and the United Way paid out around $500,000 to 300 families. They also stepped in to help those who were affected by the Mesquite Heat Fire in 2020. And then, of course, there's Dolly Parton and her Imagination Library. As we all know, Dolly Parton is bound for sainthood. There's no doubt about it. And one of her good works that she dreamed up is to give a book each month for any child beginning at birth to age 5. And the United Way of Abilene is partnered with the Imagination Library to carry out that goal. So as you can see, it has grown from more than just agency support. And I know you're wondering who else I turned up on the internet. So, some of you RSVP'd late, and that was a good thing for you. That doesn't mean I don't have your picture. I just didn't put it in the PowerPoint. I'm going to hold it in abeyance in case I need it at some future time. Here's Julie and Mike. As you probably know, they got married in the 5th grade. And I'll have you know, it's easier to spend 16 days in a mesquite tree than to successfully pull off wearing a striped tie, striped shirt, and striped jacket. He was at Cooper the same time as Charlie Black. Picture day was chaos at Cooper back then. The Clyde High School yearbook came through for me as well. Murray Edwards as a Bulldog, ready to head south and take on the world of Texas A&M. Here's Gerald Galbraith as an Abilene High Eagle. He's bound for Red Raider land. I love this picture of Paul Cannon. I wish he was here. To me, it looks like he's witnessing a mugging, but not sure what to do. Thomas Trammell looks too young to be a doctor. And I'm talking now, not back then. I'm just going to give you a second on this one to think about that, but that's the heartthrob of Midland High right there. Kathy Weatherall, I did not Photoshop Rick's picture. That is exactly how the internet gave it to me. You know, it is odd to be standing up here with those old pictures of you back there. And I do know that if you were up here, you could point to most everybody in this room and you could recall the connections that you have with them and how your lives have intersected in the past and how they continue to do so. Some of you have known each other so long that you have forgotten how you ever even met one another. On my 30th birthday, I decided I no longer wanted to work at a savings and loan. And I went in to tell my boss. It was the smartest guy I knew, and it was Ron Butler. When Laura and I were first married, we lived 4 houses down on Davis Street from Scott Deeser. When I first knew Kathy Ashby, she was Kathy Fisher, and we both were students at Hardin Simmons. I had the privilege of teaching a whole lot of your children. I look around the room, and there's a lot of people whose kids I taught. I taught all 10 of the Parker grandchildren, and I'm proud to say that I did. I was honored that I got to teach, and I look around the room, and there's quite a few former students. Heather Tidmore was one of my very first students at Abilene High School, and now she's got kids of her own. I find that hard to believe. Laura and I live in Charlie and Lee Black's old house. I've known Hillary my whole life. Unless you forget, I had a crush on a whole lot of you people out there. But many of us knew your parents, earlier couples who also dedicated their time and money not just to the United Way, but then more importantly, they taught you how to be generous, raising generous children. But when we were young, and even before many of us were born, or probably all of us were born, back when this was a car dealership, others had stepped up to the plate, names and faces you may or may not even know, past folks who gladly took their turn and did their part, created a much better Abilene, just not for their time and for their families and for their neighbors, but for us. My wife likes to reference a line from a 1956 Abilene Reporter News editorial, and I like it too. It says, "Cities don't just grow like a hothouse plant. They have to be built by men and women, generation after generation, who will give of their time and energy to community enterprises, not for personal profit, but because they love the place and take pride in its accomplishments and are willing when called on to get in there and pitch." Others did it before, and now it is your turn, and I just want to applaud you for doing your part, for getting in there and pitching, for serving on boards, for buying memberships, for hosting events, for sponsoring teams, for volunteering your time, for coming up with ideas, for seeing projects through, for being the heart and the soul of the United Way, for improving the quality of life in our little corner of West Texas. It is very obvious that you folks love Abilene, whether you were born here or you arrived here. Maybe you showed up here from Breckenridge, or from Ranger, or from mighty Houston, or from teeny tiny Henrietta, from Rogers City, Michigan, from Dallas or Winsboro or Lubbock or Graham or Midland or China Springs. But it's funny, all that has happened to bring you together, literally and figuratively, on a Thursday night in January of 2020 24 in an old Buick dealership on the Bankhead Highway. Intertwined lives, joined with a common purpose. And I just want to thank you for improving Abilene and for your united support of the United Way. Thank you for listening.